When Lian opened his eyes quietly, he found that he was lying in a muddy field, with a strange smell on the tip of his nose, a bit like a chicken soup, and a bit like a mud just overturned. He sat up suddenly, looked down, wearing a torn linen cloth, and a wooden stick that had been broken into 2 pieces lying on his foot. Surrounded by strange villages, there are crooked wooden houses on both sides of the muddy road, and there are several chickens walking leisurely on the top of the house. What's going on? Lian rubbed his son's vagina, and the brain was irritating. He clearly remembered that he was still staying up late in the dormitory to play games, but why did he reach this broken place in the blink of an eye? Suddenly, a ding sound in the sea of brains echoed, and a mechanized sound broadcasts without emotion. The crisis thunder system is activated, and the host speaks, "Welcome to the great danger. This system will provide you with danger warning services to help you survive in a dangerous world. Current crisis level, low. Tip, please keep it low and avoid unnecessary trouble. Dangerous chicken? Crisis thunder?" Lian was confused and felt like he was thrown into a ridiculous game. He lowered his head and looked at his palm, tried to clench his fists, and found that he was so powerful that he was shocked. With one hand, the broken stick around him turned into wood chips. Is this Golden Finger? Lian's eyes twitched, and his heart surged and excited, but it quickly became stressed again. He is a cautious person, and it is very dangerous to hear this through time. What if he goes anywhere, there are monsters or sarcasm? No, he has to be humble and never expose himself. He can first understand the situation before talking. Lian patted the soil on his body and decided to find a safe place to hide first. He looked around and chose the most inconspicuous path along the village, intending to sneak away. However, without taking 2 steps, the crisis in the brain suddenly became deedy and the mechanical sound hurriedly warned, "The level of crisis has been upgraded to the middle, and potential threats have been detected. It is recommended to formulate a plan immediately." What's the thing? Where is the threat? Lian suddenly tightened his head, squatted down and hid behind a pile of grass, and his eyes swept around. As a result, he only saw a fat chicken on the road, tilting his brain and pecking the rice grains on the ground, occasionally making a cuckoo sound. That's it? Lian's eyebrows were tightly locked, thinking that this riddle was bad. But he didn't dare to be careless. It turned out that this was a strange world, and he might say what kind of evil magic this chicken was. He quickly formulated a 100-step plan in his brain. The first step is to observe the movement of the chicken, the second step is to surround the chicken's vision, the third step is to keep a distance of at least 10 meters, until the 100th step, and then continue to move forward after confirming safety. Lian moved his steps carefully and prepared to follow the plan. However, the chicken suddenly raised its head, stared at him with 2 small eyes, and then a goo-goo sounded, and rushed towards him with short legs. Both trough. There is indeed something wrong with this chicken. Lian's heart beat faster and he turned around and ran away. Leta's warning sound became more and more rapid, and his brain was covered with Devil's Pursuit and he ran and sweated heavily. However, the chicken's speed was amazing, and she caught up in a few steps, and pecked his butt with her mouth. Oh, yeah! Lian jumped up in pain. When he turned around, he saw that the chicken was standing behind him with his head raised and his chest raised, flapping his wings as if he was flapping his wings. The villagers on the road heard the silence and poked out their heads to watch the heat. Several children pointed at Lee and laughed. How did this young man be chased by chickens? Ha ha ha, it runs like a rabbit. Lian's face was red, and his heart secretly implicated himself in his heart, but he still didn't dare to retaliate. All this chicken is really a demon. Will it cause even greater trouble after exercising it? So he continued to run and kept modifying the plan in his brain. Step 15, find an obstacle to avoid it. Step 16, confirm the range of the chicken attack. At this moment, the crisis Leda suddenly said, the level of crisis has been raised to the highest level. It is recommended to counterattack immediately, otherwise the consequences will be borne by themselves. Resist? Resist a chicken. Lian gritted his teeth, but when the chicken rushed over again, he finally couldn't help it, turned around suddenly, punched it out, and shouted, "I won't run away, come." Bang! There was a huge sound, and the pressure on the fist directly smashed a small hole on the ground. The chicken was shaken and landed in the mud several meters away. The wings twitched and cuckled for a few sounds, and then it stopped moving. The villagers around him calmed down in an instant, staring at Lian in a daze, as if they had seen a ghost. Lian was also stunned. He lowered his head and looked at his fist, then at the chickens on the ground. There was only one thought in his brain: did I kill the chicken? However, something even more embarrassing has come. Just to avoid it, he ran over with mud and his clothes were torn to pieces for a long time. Now he was standing among the crowd, his posture still maintaining his punches, and he was like a fool who had just crawled out of the mud pit. Ha ha ha. I don't know who laughed first, and then the whole village burst into a shocking laughter. Lian's face was as red as a tomato, and he wanted to find a place to diamond it. This young man has a hard fist. Why is he so forced by a cock? Looking at his posture, he looks like a big man, but he turns out to be a mud monkey. Just as Lian was so embarrassed that he wanted to disappear from the spot, a sudden burst of shock came from the crowd. Wait! Look, he is so powerful that he is the savior in the story. Yes. I heard that the savior could punch the demon beast, isn't that? Lian heard this and his skin was almost blown up. He hurriedly held his hand. No, 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 I am not a savior, I am just a passing by, misleading, purely misleading. However, the villagers did not hear his explanation. An old man from the white beard came out of the crowd and grabbed Lian's hand with excitement. Little brother, you must be the savior sent by God to save us from the great dark. Our village has been stricken by the demons recently, so you have to help us. What? Savior? I'm not. Lian tried to take a picture, but the old man's hand was so big that he forced him to walk towards the center of the village, and shouted, "Everyone, come, the savior has surrendered. Let's celebrate the congratulations tonight." Lian wanted to cry and was heartbroken. He clearly just wanted to be humble, but why was he pushed onto this path by force? What made him even more collapsed was that the crisis laid a DD again, discovery level, medium. It was found that there was a potential problem, and it was recommended to formulate a plan that should be corrected. Are you here? Lian's brain was buzzing and could only follow the villagers with his head in his arms. He secretly swore in his heart, no matter what, he would never be able to expose himself more, and he must be downright into the end. At this moment, two voices were transmitted from behind the crowd, one man and one woman, and the language was full of hype. Yeah, this savior was just chased by the chicken and ran around the streets. Why are you a hero now? The man smiled and he sounded like he was holding a smile. Ha, Lian, your fist is really chicken. I guess the chicken will make you sound like a big sound. The woman's voice was crisp, and she deliberately bit the word chicken hard, obviously playing with a sarcastic meme. Lian turned around and saw that the person was a tall and thin man and a girl with horsetails. The tall and thin man smiled badly, wearing a torn robe, and holding a torn book in his hand, looking like a book student who was not reliable. The girl smiled so hard that her eyes narrowed, wearing a simple cloth robe, holding a branch in her hand that she didn't know where to pull it from. Who are you? Lian browed, feeling that the two people came were not kind. The tall and thin man patted his chest and introduced himself. My name is Boyu, a think tank in the village, specializing in solving various doubts and difficulties. I just saw that you were chased by chickens, and I had come up with a wonderful idea. Next time we use chicken to communicate with it, and we guarantee that it will not chase you. Chicken? What's the matter? Lian looked at the black line and felt that this person's brain was 80% problem. The girl next to her covered her mouth and laughed, and answered, My name is Shinchi. Don't listen to Boya's nonsense. He just likes to make trouble. But you, Lian, just that boxing is really a chicken bully, ha ha ha. Lian's mouth twitched, and the two of them sang and reconciled, and it was clear that they were coming to mock him. He was about to turn the tables when Boya suddenly came over and said in a low voice, Don't rush to refuse. Although the identity of the savior is irritating, there are many benefits, such as not having to worry about food and drink, and can also take the treasures in the village. Otherwise, we can cooperate and I will help you with plans. You are responsible for taking action. What's the case? Yes, right. Shinshu was also excited and blinked, saying, if we are here to help you, I will guarantee that you will not lose your chicken, haha. Looking at these two people without saying a word, there was only one thought in my heart, this is absolutely not reliable. But at the moment, he was surrounded by villagers and could not take it off, so he could only deal with it with his head and secretly thought about how to get rid of this trouble. At this time, the crisis thundered Didi again, discovery level, intermediate. It was detected that the teammates were potentially cheating. It is recommended to be vigilant. Lian almost vomited blood after hearing this prompt. He looked at Boyu and Sinwei's unhappy smiles, and he thought that, in addition to being a demon, this person might be his biggest crisis. Lian stood in the open space in the middle of the village, with mud still on his body, and his ears were filled with the villagers' warm voices and Boyu and Shinshu's chatter. He felt unwilling, but looking at the white-bearded old eyes full of anticipation, as well as the old farms and the shouts of saviors 10,000 years by the villagers around him, he knew that the hat of the savior could not be taken off. Okay, the savior is the savior, Lian gritted his teeth and muttered in a low voice, but I have to be humble and can't really take myself seriously. Just run away when you complete the mission, and never leave me. The white beard saw him pointing, and his eyes were almost out of his way, and he said with a stern voice, Savior, our dangerous land has not been peaceful recently. I heard that the end of the chicken world is about to descend, the demons are raging, and the chickens are living in vain. You have to take us out of this crisis. The doomsday of the chicken world? What's the thing? Lian's eyebrows were snaking, thinking that the name sounded ridiculous, but the crisis in the brain suddenly Didi came up, and the mechanical voice reminded coldly, mission update, stop the doomsday of the chicken world, the mainline target has been activated, the level of crisis, unknown, it is recommended to formulate a long-term plan. Lian's mouth twitched, and his heart was secretly filled with pain. However, he quickly decided on his brain the first plan, first find out what this doomsday of the chicken world is, and then decide what to do next. After all, be cautious and never act concisely. The old man saw him silent, thinking that he was thinking about some profound strategies, and quickly added, Savior, our village is the first stop. I heard that the Chuyu mountain ahead has an unusual static state, which may be the nest of the demon. You have to take people to explore the way and solve the danger. Does Sing the Way? Magic's nest? Lian's hair was almost blown up when he heard this. He was about to find a reason to recommend it, but Boyu next to him suddenly interrupted and patted his chest and said, no problem. Savior, with me here, I guarantee you to be in a smooth journey. I am a think tank in the village, so it's okay to hand this over to me. Yes, right. Shinshu was also warmly on the side and said with a smile, Lian, with us accompanying you, I guarantee that your chicken is completely fine, ha ha ha. Looking at this unreliable guy without saying anything, there was only one thought in his mind, if this person follows, I guess there will be more trouble. But the villagers had already started to applaud and shouted the savior goes to the battle. He had no chance to refuse. He could only stick to his head and secretly decided, he must keep an eye on this person on the road and never let them come. So, Lian was forced to take Boyu and Xinli on the so-called stop the end of the chicken world. The three left the village and walked along the Niba road towards the direction of Chiyu Mountain. Lian walked in front, his eyes swept around, and held a wooden stick rolled from the village in his hand, ready to face the sudden situation at any time. Boyu's penis was following behind, holding the broken book in his hand and humming a small song in his mouth. Shinshu was even more appreciative. The little flowers walking along the road were often surprised, wow, this flower is so beautiful. Can you be right? Lian finally couldn't help it and glared at her, we are going to explore the demon's nest, not the suburbs. Hey, Lord Savior, don't be so tight, Boyu smiled and raised his hand. I have heard of this Chuyu mountain, it's no big deal. There are many wild chickens on the top. Don't worry, with my wisdom, you can do anything. Xi Jing? That's your chicken? Lien rolled his eyes, and he didn't believe that this guy could help. He was about to say a few more words, when the crisis in the brain suddenly rose rapidly, and the mechanical sound warned, "The level of crisis has been raised to the highest level, and potential threats have been detected in front of him. It is recommended to formulate a defense plan immediately." Collection, come again? Lien felt nervous, and quickly stopped walking, and signaled that the two people behind him were at peace. He squatted down and looked ahead, seeing that the path was as thick as a forest of trees. There was a noisy sound coming from the forest, like a chirping or a human voice, which made people creepy. This sound won't be a magical beast, right? Lian's eyebrows were tightly locked and quickly formulated a strict defense plan in his brain. The first step is to find a hidden point to observe the enemy. The second step is to keep Boyu and Xinqing in a safe position. The third step is to keep Boyu and Xinqing in a safe position. If they are a magical beast, immediately walk around and avoid it, until the 100th step, to ensure that the safety of the officers retreated. Hey, don't act, listen to my arrangement. Lien lowered his voice and turned around and found that Boyu and Xinqiu had not heard him, and were excitedly looking towards the forest. Hey, Lien, why are you so hot when you hear the sound? Boyu touched his chin and his eyes lit up. I guess it's not a magician. What kind of activity might be? Let's go and have a look. What are you looking at? What should I do if I am a demon? Lien gritted his teeth and wanted to hold them up. Xi and Qing ran over and ran, shouting, "Let's go, maybe it's something fun." Don't chicken, ha! Come back. Li stomped his feet in a state of silence, but seeing that the two of them had already run away, he could only follow him with his head and secretly confronted him how to get on this pit. However, when the three of them rushed into the forest, the scene in front of them made Lien stunned. In the open space in the middle of the forest, dozens of villagers were surrounded by various croakers on the ground, and a fat chicken was covered with them. The villagers were shouting excitedly, "Don't lose chickens! Don't lose chickens!" and the scene was as hot as if they were on the day. There is also a big sign in the center of the open space, which reads, "The annual Chicken Must Lose competition, whoever catches the most chickens, who is the Chicken King?" What? Competition? Lien was stunned, and the defense plan in his brain collapsed instantly. He looked down and saw that the warning of the crisis later was still there. The mechanical sound was coldly reminded, "Danger level, high, potential threat has not been lifted. It is recommended to stay alert. Beware of this." Isn't this just the villagers playing? Li was so angry that he wanted to trick people, but he didn't say anything. Xi and Cheong next to him suddenly laughed sigh and pointed to the sign and said, "Ha, chicken must not be lost, this name is really chicken. Does it mean that the opportunity cannot be lost?" As soon as she said this, the villagers in the open space suddenly calmed down and turned to look at her, with a strange look in their eyes. Lian's heart was thrilled, and he didn't think he was against each other, but he didn't get enough time to react. A big Han among the villagers suddenly yelled, "What? You must not lose the opportunity? How dare you, an outsider, say this? This is an insult to our chicken clan." Ah? Insult? Xinqiu was confused. Before she could figure out what was going on, the chicken in the open space suddenly became bang bang. The chicken inside seemed to have understood her words. It was furious and made a harsh goo-goo sound. Then the cane was knocked open, and a large group of chickens rushed out and headed straight for the three of them. Both trough. The chickens are gone. Lian's head was numb, and he instantly realized that the chickens here were indeed not simple. I guess they were terrible. He hurriedly shouted, "Run! Don't be stunned." However, Boya stood up at this time, patted his chest and said, "Don't panic. With me here, what's this little thing? Let me use my wisdom to guide them." After speaking, he took out a torch from his back, and didn't know where he got it. He ignited it directly, and then shouted at the chicken group, "Come on, come and chase me. Are you sick?" Lien was so angry that he wanted to slap him with a slap. Sure enough, the next second, the torch accidentally wiped a pile of grass. The pile of grass ignited instantly, and the fire spread rapidly, and a chicken beside it was spotted. The chickens were even more crazy when they saw the fire, and the scene was out of control. "Ha, Boyu, you're a chicken fire." Xian Qing was still greasy on the fire, laughing so hard that she couldn't stand up, but the voice fell, and a big cock came straight towards her. Her sharp mouth pecked her on her brain. "Oh!" Xian was shocked and hid behind Lian, hugged her head and shouted, "Help, Lian, this chicken is really chicken." Looking at this group of irritating, the crisis in the brain has already been reconciled, and the mechanical sound has quickly warned, the level of crisis, extremely high. It is recommended to resolve the crisis immediately, otherwise the consequences will be borne by yourself. Solve it. How can I solve it? Lian gritted his teeth, but as the fire grew bigger and bigger, the chicken group and the villagers were in a group. He knew that if he didn't take action, the place would probably be burned to ashes. He took a deep breath and decided not to lower his temper. He suddenly rushed into the middle of the chicken group. With both hands, he waved his hands and brought a strong pressure, which forced the chicken group to fly out. Bang bang bang. There were several loud noises, and the chicken group was smashed by him one by one, and most of the flames on the ground were blown away by the wind. The villagers watched the scene in amazement, stopped, and the sloping chickens seemed to be shocked and stood there and did not dare to move. What kind of power is this?" a villager said tremblingly, his eyes filled with shock and admiration. "Savior! It's indeed the Savior!" Another villager shouted, and then a shocking cry broke out in the whole field, and he knelt down and shouted, "Savior's mighty!" Lian stood in the center of the field, covered in chicken hair and gray, and his face was as dark as a bottom. He originally wanted to solve the problem in a low way, but as a result, he exposed his strength to one's own strength. When he looked back, Boyu and Shinshu were hiding behind the tree, poking out to laugh secretly. Boyu also gave a thumbs up and said, "Lian, it's awesome. This chicken shocked the world, admire it." Yes, you are so powerful that you are simply a chicken domineering the world, haha." Shinshu covered her mouth and laughed, her eyes full of joking. He was so angry that his teeth were shattered, but the scene was stable now and he couldn't get angry, so he could only accept the thanks from the villagers. The villagers came up in a verbal way and said that they would give him chicken eggs and chicken meat as a gift. They also said that it was simply their blessing to have a savior and this chicken must not be lost to competition. Lian slapped his hand helplessly, indicating that they would not be polite, and they just wanted to leave this broken place tightly. However, Boyu came over again at this time and said in a low voice, "Hey, Lord Savior, I heard that there is even more trouble on the side of Triyu Mountain. Why don't we take advantage of the heat to get the iron and continue to move forward? I have already figured out a wonderful plan to ensure that it can solve all problems." "Your plan? Do you want to slim down?" Lian glared at him coldly, and Wu Zhen didn't believe that this guy could have any good ideas. "Don't, just listen." Boyu smiled and looked so hard, as if he was holding back some bad ideas. Shinshu also spoke from the side and blinked his eyes and said, "Yes, Lian, we have just started now. There will definitely be more chicken things waiting for you later." Lian rubbed his son acupoint and felt that he was probably unable to calm down. The crisis has risen again, and the mechanical sound is coldly reminded, crisis level, medium, potential quelling has not been lifted. It is recommended to be vigilant and prepare for the next stage of the mission. He looked at Boyu and Shinshu's unhappy smiles, and then heard Lei Da's warning, and there was only one thought in his heart, with this pit and this broken Lei Da, there would be more trouble waiting for him next. Lian walked on the path of Triyu Mountain, and the soil under his feet was as soft as if it would collapse at any time. The trees on both sides were sparse, and there were a few chicken hairs hanging on the branches, which were floating at any time, making them look particularly strange. His face was so dark that it could drip out of water. He held the wooden stick that was rolling from the village in his hands, and his eyes were slapped around him, ready to face the sudden situation at any time. Boyu and Shinchi behind him were weak. Boyu hummed an unknown little song and was holding the broken book in his hand, as if he was on a trip. Shinchi walked along the way and kicked the pebbles on the road, and kept making giggling laughs, as if he was completely unaware of the danger. "Hey, can you be right? Lian finally couldn't help it and glared at them. I heard that there is a magical output from this chicken Yushan. We are not here to play. Hey, Lord Savior, don't be so tight. Boya slammed his hand and his face relaxed. I heard from the people in the village that there are many wild chickens on the top of this mountain, and it's no big deal. Besides, with you here, what kind of demons can't kneel down and call him dad? Yes, right, Lian, as soon as your fist came out, any demon needs to be beaten with a chicken egg, ha. Xian Qing smiled and bit the word chicken hard, obviously playing with her sarcastic meme again. Lian's mouth twitched, and he was convinced that this pitfall was worthy. He was about to say a few more words, when the crisis in the brain suddenly rose rapidly, and the mechanical sound was coldly warned. The level of crisis has been raised to the highest level, and the strong threat has been detected in front of him. It is recommended to formulate a defense plan immediately. Collection, come again? Lian felt nervous, and quickly stopped walking, and signaled that the two people behind him were at peace. He squatted down and looked ahead, seeing that the path was as open as a valley. There was an old stone platform in the middle of the valley. On the stone platform, there was a thing with a glimmer of light, like some kind of treasure. There was a strange smell in the air around him, and he could still hear a low roar, which made people creepy. This place is not against each other. Lian's eyebrows were tightly locked and quickly formulated a strict defense plan in his brain. The first step is to observe the terrain and confirm the potential threat. The second step is to keep Boyu and Xinqing in a safe position. The third step is to walk the road close to the stone platform to avoid frontal conflicts. Until the 100th step, we ensure that the safety of the officers retreated. Hey, don't be upset, listen to my arrangement. Lian lowered his voice, turned around and found that Boyu and Xinqiu had not heard him, and were excitedly looking towards the valley. Hey, Lian, look at the stone platform, why is there a shiny egg? Boya touched his chin and his eyes lit up. I heard from the villagers that there is that egg pain treasure in the world of dangerous chicken, saying that it can stop the endless end of the chicken world. Isn't that a baby? Lian looked at the black line and thought that the name sounded ridiculous, but the warning sound of crisis thunder became more and more rapid. The mechanical voice added, Mission update, obtain the baby, the main line's goal progress is promoted, and the level of crisis level, extremely high, it is recommended to act cautiously. Be careful, this name doesn't look like something good. Lian was secretly confused, but now Leda has already been in charge, so he has to pay attention to it. He was about to further improve the plan, and Xian Qi suddenly laughed sigh and pointed to Shirtai and said, Ha, baby, this name is really baby, ha ha ha. As soon as she said this, the air around the valley seemed to have suddenly solidified, and then a low roar came from behind the stone platform, shaking the ground slightly trembled. Lian's head was numb, and he quickly shouted in a low voice, Close your mouth. Don't talk. However, it's too late. A huge monster crawled out from behind the stone platform, like an enlarged lizard, covered with egg-shaped pieces, and two pointed corners on the brain, with red lights in their eyes staring at the three of them in anger. Every time it took a step, the ground would shake, and a suffocating feeling of pressure was filled with the air. What's this thing? Boyo took a step back in surprise, and the broken books in his hand fell off. Old Dandenwang? Xinqing widened her eyes, her voice trembling, but then she couldn't help but reiterate, the name is so painful. Another saying? Li was so angry that he wanted to slap him, but now it was not the time for a quarrel. The critical thunder has already been resolved, and the mechanical sound has urgently warned, disaster level, fatal, the guardian demon Dandan Dragon was detected, and it is recommended to retreat immediately or formulate a countermeasure plan. Retreat? It's too late. Lian gritted his teeth and saw that Dandenwang had opened his mouth wide, and he let out a deafening roar, and then rushed towards the three of them. He quickly adjusted the plan, decided to protect his teammates first, and shouted, You, hide behind, I'll take it. Hey, Lord Savior, hard. Boyu said, but his feet were not slow to move, and he pulled Xian Li and hid behind the stone beside him. Xinqiu ran and shouted, Lian, come on, don't let this dragon's egg break your dream, haha. Close your mouth. Lien glared at her without saying a word, then turned to Dandenlong, took a deep breath, and was ready to welcome the attack. However, he was still unsure. This magic seemed to be stronger than the previous chicken group. He failed every time he failed, and the consequences were unbelievable. So he quickly added several 10 emergency plans in his brain, and everything was considered to be clear from how to adjust the magical beast's attention. Dandenlong was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye it hit Lien, slapped his huge claws hard, bringing a crazy look. Lien flashed his body and dodged it. Then he punched the demon's belly, making a deep bang. Dandenlong felt pain and let out a roar, but he did not fall down. Instead, his tail swept and forced Lien back for a few steps. Bored, this guy is so thick-skinned. Lien gritted his teeth and felt his arms numb. He was about to adjust his strategy, and Boya suddenly poked out from behind the stone and shouted, "Lien, don't be tough. I have an absolute idea. Listen to me and use wisdom to get it done." "What kind of wisdom? Is it a little bit of fire?" Lien replied without any worries, but Boyu's sturdy Jen said excitedly, "Look at this Dandenlong, there is an egg in his name, so he must have a thought about the egg. We pretend to surrender, and then throw a fake egg to attract it." "What's the matter? Fake egg? Where is the fake egg?" Lien's face was black, and he felt that this idea was ridiculous. However, Boyo had already taken out a rounded stone from his back, and had a little mud, disguised it as an egg, and shouted, "Look, I'll come." After saying that, he suddenly rushed out and threw the fake egg at Dandenlong. With a bang, the stone hit Dandenlong's brain, making a crisp sound. The demon was stunned for a moment, looked down at the egg on the ground, and then a more angry roar came out, as if he was irritated by the slightest, and rushed towards Boyo with red eyes. "Call! Why don't you play according to the routine?" Boyo was shocked and crawled back to the back of the stone, and ran around and shouted, "Lien, help! My wisdom failed." "What are you called, Jigue?" "This is called seeking death." Li was so angry that his teeth were shattered, but seeing that Dandenlong had already moved his target, he could only rush up with his head and try to hold the demon. However, the demon seemed to be furious this time, and his movements were faster and more ruthless. His claws and tail were staggered, and Lien was suppressed for a moment. "Lien, be careful. Don't be really broken by its egg." Xian Qing shouted from behind, full of worry in her voice, but when the voice fell, she couldn't help but reiterate, if the egg is broken, it will really hurt." "You said it again?" Lien almost vomited blood, but this sentence seemed to touch a certain nerve of Dandenlong. The demon suddenly stopped moving and turned his head to stare at Xian Li. Then he let out a deafening roar, as if he was finally angry by the words "boy hurt." He then pushed Xian Lien toward Xian Li. "Hey, help!" Xinshu hurriedly hid, but her martial power was 0, and she fell after running for a few steps. She was about to take a picture of Dandenlong's claws. He spoke clearly and felt tight, and he couldn't take any more caution. He suddenly burst out with all his strength, and as soon as he flashed his body, he rushed to Xian Li, grabbed the demon's claw with both hands and forced it back. "Pull me!" Lien roared angrily, his body's strength exploded, and he pushed Dandenlong back a few steps. Afterwards, he took advantage of the blow to the demon's brain and made a deafening bang. Dandenlong let out a mourning sound, and finally fell to the ground. The pieces shattered a large piece and finally lost the power of the battle. Who? Lien gasped and stood beside the demon, covered in soil and blood. His face was terrifyingly dark. He looked back and Boyu and Shinchio were poking their heads from behind the stone, looking at him admiringly. "Bog, Lien, your punch is simply an egg that makes you shocked." Boyu gave a thumbs up and smiled. "Yes, right, with your strength, I guess Dandenlong has to call you the Egg Emperor, haha." Xian Qing also covered her mouth and laughed secretly, as if she had completely forgotten that she was almost photographed into meat paste. Li glared at them without saying a word, believing in this pitfall. He turned to the stone platform, ready to see what the so-called baby treasure was. However, when he walked closer, he found that what was placed on the stone platform was not a treasure at all, but an ordinary chicken egg. What's the thing? Is this egg treasure? Lian was stunned and reached out to pick up the egg. He found that there were a few crooked words engraved on the eggshell. A fake egg is specially used to treat the pain. Poochie. Boyu and Shinshu saw this scene and burst into laughter. Boyu patted his thigh and said, "Ha ha ha, Lian, you fought hard to defeat the demon, but it turned out to be a fake egg? This is 2 egg and it hurts." Yes, yes, Lord Savior, your battle is simply like the chicken that will be destroyed, haha. Xian Qing smiled so hard that her eyes were almost out, and she did not forget to continue her melody. Lian's face was as dark as a bottom, and his hands holding the fake egg were shaking slightly. He originally thought that this treasure would at least be useful, but it turned out to be a joke with a slight ending. He was about to throw the egg, and the crisis Leda suddenly rose to Ndidi, and the mechanical voice reminded coldly, "Mission progress update. Confirm that the egg pain treasure is fake, the potential rope has not been lifted, the crisis level, medium, it is recommended to continue to explore the depths of Chuyu Mountain." Also explore? Explore it just a waste. Li was so angry that he wanted to trick people, but now Leda had spoken, so he could only accept it with a stingy head. He looked back and saw that Boyu and Shinchi were studying the fake egg, as if they had discovered something new. "Hey, Lian, look at the words on this eggshell, why does it look like a map?" Boyu pointed to the marks on the eggshell, full of his face. "I guess, this fake egg may be a thread, pointing to a real treasure. Let's continue to walk forward, and maybe we can find the real goods." Yes, yes, don't let it go. Maybe the real treasure is waiting for your egg to grow, haha. Xian Qing started her meme again, smiling so hard that her eyes narrowed. Lian rubbed his son acupoint and felt that he was probably unable to calm down. He looked at Boyu and Shinshu's unhappy smiles, and then heard Lei Da's reminder. He had only one thought in his heart: with this pit and this broken mission, there would be more trouble waiting for him next. However, he couldn't refuse. After all, the mainline mission has not been completed yet, and the crisis of Doomsday of the chicken world is still at the top. He could only grit his teeth and slash the head of the place and continue to move towards the depths of Chuyu Mountain with the pit. Along the way, Boyu kept coming up with various absurd ideas, from using chicken hair to make blowjobs to learning chickens to confuse enemies, each of which made him so angry that he wanted to beat someone up. Xian Li was responsible for oiling on the fire, and occasionally a sarcastic slogan related to chicken was heard, which was very energetic. The 3 of them left for about half a time and finally arrived at the core area of Ryu Mountain. The air here was even more stressful, and the trees around it almost withered, and a large number of chicken bones and broken eggshells were scattered on the ground, as if they had experienced a fierce battle. There is a huge stone door in the middle of the valley, with strange runes engraved on it, emitting a dangerous breath. There is absolutely a problem here. Lian stopped, and the crisis had already been affected. The mechanical sound warned, "Crisis level, extremely high, unknown threats were detected, and multiple defense strategies were recommended." After speaking out, he quickly decided on several 10 defense plans in his brain, from how to approach the stone gate to how to deal with potential traps. He considered them all without any leakage. However, Boyu came over again at this time and said with a smile, "Lian, don't be so tight. I have a wonderful idea. Let's knock on the door directly, saying that maybe the people around will be enthusiastic about us." Black on the door? Have you gotten into the water in your brain? With a bang, the stone hit the stone door, making a deep sound. Later, the stone door trembled slowly, as if it had been touched with a certain connection, and a biting cold air came out of the door. Lian's heart was thrilled and he yelled, "Retreat! There is danger!" However, it's too late. A sound of rock from the stone gate opened, and a large group of monsters emerged from the inside, like a mixture of chickens and dragons, covered in egg-shaped tablets, red lights in their eyes, and a harsh goo-goo sound, slamming at the 3 of them. "Crockett, come again?" Lian gritted his teeth and quickly adjusted the plan, and prepared to fight. But he knew in his heart that this trouble was probably caused by Boyu and Shinshu. Li Yan stood in front of the stone gate, covered in dust, with a few chicken hairs on his body, and his face was as dark as if ink could drip out. Although the mixed chicken dragon demons that had just been knocked out of the stone gate were smashed down by him one by one, the harsh goo-goo sound and the earthly fragments of the eggshell still made him feel thrilled. He lowered his head and looked at a stone slab falling from the demon's body, with several crooked words engraved on it: "Real treasures are hidden in the Chicken Mountain. Don't turn back the road of pain." A slab also painted a simple map pointing to a mountain in the northern part of the dangerous mountains. Chicken Mountain? A real treasure? Li Yan bent his eyebrows and his brain quickly turned around. He didn't want to make up for these trashing things, but the mainline mission was to stop the end of the chicken world. This treasure was 80% related to the mission and could not be avoided. He clenched his fist and decided secretly, no matter what, he had to get the treasure, and then snatched his body tightly, and never fight. "Hey, Li Yan, look at this stone slab, Chicken Mountain. It's very chicken tone, ha." Xi and Qing came over and glanced at the stone slab, and Lima started her sarcastic melody again, smiling so hard that her eyes narrowed into a snail. "Can you stop mentioning chicken?" Li Yan glared at her without saying a word, and his brain recalled the situation when the demon ran away. He was really afraid that this girl would bring some trouble to her. Bo Yu next to him lifted the stone slab, studied it in a model for a long time, then patted his chest and said, "Sir Savior, I have heard of this Chicken Mountain. It is said that it is the most dangerous place in the dangerous mountains. The mountain is full of magical animals, and treasures must be hidden seriously. But don't panic, with me here, I guarantee that you can find the shortcut and get it easily." "Shortcut? Your wisdom?" Li Yan sneered, thinking of Boyu's fake egg attracts monsters and spot fire and burn chicken before. His heart suddenly became furious. He suddenly slammed, "Don't worry, I have my own plan. Let's follow the steps and safety comes first." After speaking, Li Yan rolled the stone slab from Boyu's hand, carefully studied the map, and then took two people away from Triu Mountain and headed towards the north. On the way, the crisis in his brain suddenly rose and the mechanical sound was cold and reminded, "Target location, Chicken Mountain, danger level, unknown. It is recommended to formulate multiple defense strategies to be vigilant." "Unknown? You still need to say this?" Li Yan gritted his teeth and said, Lu Dao's words in his heart. But he didn't dare to be careless and quickly settled hundreds of plans in his brain, from the selection of routes to the attack on the potential magical beasts, all of which were considered without any leakage. He decided to lead his team to travel through all possible dangerous areas, and even if he walked a few more days, he would never take risks. However, the plan never changes. The three of them walked less than half a day before they arrived at a fork in the road. On the left is a winding path, passing through a dense forest, which looks peaceful and quiet. On the right is a wide avenue, but you can see a few dark shadows swaying from a distance, like a magician's track. Li Yan stopped walking and thought for a long time. The crisis thunder deity reminded him that the right level of crisis is middle, and the left side is low. Go to the left, it's safe. Li Yan made a decision and turned around and walked towards the path. "Hey, Li Yan, wait." Bo Yu hurriedly called him, pointing to the road on the right and said, "Look there, although there is a little shadow, the road is wide. Let's go a little faster and say we might be able to reach Mount Chicken as early as possible. The path on the left is very striking, maybe there is a trap." "Yes, right, Li Yan, don't be too chicken. Walking the road, you may be able to chicken arrive early, haha." Xi and Qing also spoke from the side, smiling so hard that his eyes were slim. "Close your mouth." Li Yan glared at them with no gaze. "What do you know?" Leda said that there is danger on the right side, and the left side is safe. "It's okay to hear me." After saying that, he didn't give the two people a chance to rebel, but walked towards the path on the left. However, this safe path did not allow Li Yan to feel at ease for long. Less than a stick of incense, a low roar suddenly came from the forest. Then several monsters with chicken heads and wolf bodies emerged from the tree forest and rushed towards the three of them with big mouths. Crisis thunders instantly turned into a circle, and the mechanical sound was urgently warned, the level of crisis has been raised to the highest level, and it is recommended to counterattack immediately. Boke! Isn't it safe? Lee was so angry that he wanted to kill someone, but now it was not the time to complain. He quickly slapped Boyu and Shinchi, punched the monster in front, and directly flew it out. However, this punch seemed to stab a horse bee, and more chicken wolves were shot out from the forest, with a total of more than a dozen, making a harsh goo-goo sound around the three of them. Lian, it's tough. Your fist is a chicken bully. Xian Su hid behind and shouted, not forgetting to say a joke, but the sound was clearly trembling. Don't quarrel. Lian gritted his teeth, quickly adjusted his strategy, and took the two of them back. Finally, after paying a few chicken hair and mud, he barely got rid of the monster group. However, this battle took a lot of energy and his face was a little white. Hey, Lord Savior, I'll just say walk on the road, you must not listen. Boya patted the gray on his body, and looked like I knew it for a long time. Lian glared at him coldly, without saying anything, but he felt a little regretful. He decided to be more cautious and never take risks in the next path. So, in the next 3 days, the three of them almost covered the road around Chicken Mountain. They encountered a valley where there might be magic, saw the swamps that were surfing, and even a small slope that looked a little steep. Lian felt unsafe and had to lead the team for more than 10 miles. Lian, we have been wandering here for more than 10 times, and Chicken Mountain is still far away. Boyu finally couldn't help it, and complained with the sweat of the head, according to your way, the end of the chicken world has arrived, and we haven't reached the foot of the mountain yet. Yes, we can't continue to chicken, haha. Shinshu also complained. Although she was so tired that she was panting, she still didn't stop talking. Stop talking. Safety first, do you understand? Lian blackened his face and ignored their complaints. However, he was also a little nervous. After all, he had not encountered any major dangers during these few days, but his progress was slower. He was wondering whether to take a little risk. Boya suddenly lit up his eyes and pointed to a hidden path ahead and said, Hey, Lian, look at this road. Although it is a little narrow, it is definitely a shortcut to go directly under the foot of the Chicken Mountain. I promise, there is no danger. Shortcut? Lian glanced at Leda with his head down, and his mechanical voice reminded, danger level, medium, it is recommended to choose carefully. He wanted to refuse, but looking at Boyu swearing, thinking about the bag that had been wandering for several days, he finally gritted his teeth and pointed, okay, go this way, but I heard me and found that it was not for the retreat of the rallied horse. No problem. Savior, believe in my wisdom. Boya patted his chest and walked towards the path with great enthusiasm. Xian Qing also followed behind and said with a smile, let's go, maybe this road can allow us to fly into the sky, haha. Following behind without saying a word, there will always be a bad feeling in your heart. Sure enough, less than half an hour later, the terrain between the two paths became narrower and narrower, and a fishy smell began to roar in the air, and a low roar was coming from the distance. The crisis thunder Didi kept responding, and the mechanical sound warned, the danger level has been raised to an extremely high, and the magic lair has been detected. It is recommended to retreat immediately. Trough. Nest? Lian's heart was tightened and he shouted, Boyu, stop. There's a problem with this road, let's go back. However, Boyu's softness didn't hear him at all, and turned around and said with a smile, don't panic, Lian, this must be wrong. I heard that there are treasures in the magical nest, so we might be able to leak them. Besides, with you here, what are you afraid of? After saying that, he insisted on moving forward, and even speeded up his pace. Are you sick? Lian was so angry that he wanted to beat someone up, but seeing that Boyu and Shinshu had already run away, he could only follow him with his head. As a result, after a turn, the three of them suddenly opened their eyes and a huge cave appeared. A large number of bones and eggshells were scattered around the entrance of the cave, and the air was filled with a strong fishy smell. There were about a few dozen red flashing eyes in the hole, and a low roar sound was heard. Is this a magical nest? Lian's head was numb, and the crisis thunder had already been reconciled. The mechanical sound was urgently warned, danger level, fatal. If the magical group was detected, it is recommended to retreat immediately or formulate a countermeasure plan. Retreat. Run. Lien gave a decisive order and turned around and wanted to take the person away. However, Boyu was stunned at this time, pointing to a flashing thing in the cave, and said excitedly, "Hey, Lien, look there. Is it a treasure from Chicken Mountain? We have all come, how sorry it won't take it away. Take you. Run." Li was so angry that he wanted to kick him, but before he finished speaking, the group of demons in the cave seemed to be shocked, and a shocking roar was made. Then several dozen monsters with chicken dragons rushed out, and one with a big mouth, and rushed towards the three of them. Bog! Boyu, your quick speed is really a good chicken. Lien gritted his teeth and quickly stepped in front of the two people, ready to fight. The body shapes of these magical beasts are larger than the previous Dandan dragon, and there are more numbers, which makes it feel urged. He quickly adjusted the plan in his brain, decided to hold the demon first and fight Boyu and Shinshu for escape time. You guys, hide behind, I'll come. Lien roared, then punched the demon in front, making a deep bang sound, and directly flew it out. However, this punch seemed to have angered the group of demons. More monsters came up, their claws and teeth were slammed. Lien was actually suppressed for a moment. Lien, come on. Don't let these guys chicken flip you, haha. Xian Qing hid behind and shouted. Although the sound was full of worry, she still couldn't help but make a joke. When Lien was attacked, she was so anxious that she stomped her feet. Suddenly, the spirit moved and shouted, "Hey, let's not fight these demons. What's the situation with peace? Our chicken is as good as before, can it be?" As soon as she said this, the originally irritable demon group suddenly stopped, as if she had understood her words, and turned to look at her. However, the next second, their eyes became redder and they roared more angry, as if they were finally angry by the sentence "chicken is as good as before," and then they tried to speak and rushed towards Xian. Call! Are you here again? Lien almost vomited blood, but seeing Xian Qing being surrounded by the demon group, he couldn't take any more caution, and suddenly burst out with all his strength. He rushed to her with his body, grabbed the demon's claw with both hands and threw it out. Pull me! Lien roared angrily, and his strength exploded. His fists hit the group of demons like rain. Each fist brought a wind pressure, knocking the monsters to the point of cuckoo, and flying with chicken hair. Boyu and Xian looked at the scene in a daze, and were finally shocked by Lian's fighting force. Bogroof, Lien, your fist is simply a chicken breaking the dome. Boyu hid behind and shouted with a thumbs up. Yes, right, with your strength, I guess these demons have to call you the Chicken Emperor, ha. Xian Qing also spoke in a helping voice. Although she was almost photographed as a meat paste, now she was watching Lien killing the four sides, and she started to play with jokes again. Li rolled his eyes without saying a word and thought it would be a pitfall. He exploded with all his might, and finally, after paying a few chicken hair and a scarred body, he smashed the last magic to the ground. The entire nest calmed down in an instant, leaving only the fragments of eggshells and his heavy breathing sound. Who has solved it? Lien wiped the sweat from his head, turned to the flashing thing in the cave, and found that it turned out to be a stone head full of runes, with the words "one line of the treasure of the Chicken Mountain, you have to go through 3 connections to get the real treasure." There was also an old map beside the stone head, marking a location on the top of the Chicken Mountain. Line? Not a real treasure? Lian's face turned black, and he felt that his attack was useless again. But the crisis has come to an end, and the mechanical sound reminds, mission progress update, obtain the Chicken Mountain baby object cable, with a progress of about 66%. Crisis level, high, it is recommended to continue exploring. Also explore? I'm almost cheated by you. Lien gritted his teeth and glared at Boyu and Shinshu, but his heart was no longer so angry. Although this crowd was so tragic that they were so rude, they didn't really let him go, and they were somewhat motivated. Hey, Lien, don't be angry. Boyu smiled and said, look, although my shortcut is a little miserable, we have at least got the ropes. Is it right? I promise next time, I will definitely be safe. Yes, yes, we are united in our hearts and can get through any difficulties, ha. Xian Qing also spoke from the side, blinking her eyes and looking innocent. Lian rubbed the sun's hole and sighed helplessly, okay, you're useful. But if you come again next time, don't blame me for beating someone. After saying that, he put away the stone and map, took the two of them out of the nest, and was about to continue to move towards the top of Chicken Mountain. Although I still disliked it, Lian's view on this pitfall has quietly changed a little. Maybe, although they are not reliable, they can still trust the key moments. Of course, the premise is that they don't make any more suggestions, otherwise, he really can't guarantee that he can resist beating people. The three left the nest and continued to move towards the top of the Chicken Mountain. Lian walked in front, holding a wooden stick in his hand, and slapped his eyes around him, and prepared to face the sudden situation at any time. Bo Yu and Xinqing followed behind. Although they were just scratched, they were still in a good mood. They walked around and chatted with various ridiculous ideas, and sometimes Xinqing's ha-ha laughter came. Lian heard the silence behind him, his mouth twitched slightly, and he secretly swore in his heart, no matter what troubles there are in the future, he must keep an eye on this person and he must never let them come back. However, the crisis thunder has risen again, and the mechanical sound is cold and reminded, crisis level, high, the potential threat of the top of the Chicken Mountain has not been lifted. It is recommended to be vigilant and prepare for the next stage of challenge. Lian gritted his teeth and looked at the nearby mountaintop far away, and there was only one thought in his heart, when will this mission be completed? Lian carried Boyu and Xinqiu and went up the mountain road of Chicken Yamazaki. The air became thinner and thinner, and the gravel road under the feet became steeper. The cold wind at the top of the mountain blew over, and a strange fishy smell made people feel nervous. Lian held the wooden stick that had been ripped from the village in his hand. Although he had been grinding to pieces, it still gave him a little insignificant sense of peace of mind. His eyes were staring ahead, and the crisis in the brain had already been affected, and the mechanical sound continued to warn, danger level, extremely, extremely high, system loading, abnormal data, suggest, retreat immediately. Retreat? Retreat your big ghost. Lian gritted his teeth and cried, and shouted a low spell. This radar has not stopped since he went up the mountain, and now he has just passed the news, and the prompt sounds are like he needs to work at any time. He knew in his heart that at this point, retreating was impossible. The lines on the stone slabs, the guidance of the map, and the mainline mission of the end of the chicken world, all kinds of phenomena show that the top of the Chicken Mountain is the source of everything. If they don't solve the trouble here, they can't finish the road down the mountain. Hey, Lian, look at the top of this mountain, why is it so sequin? The wind makes my goosebumps rise, haha. Xian Qing walked behind, wrapping the old cloth clothes on her body, and still didn't stop talking, and she forced a sarcastic melody to relieve the atmosphere. Close your mouth. Say another chicken, I'll throw you down. Lian turned his head and glared at her fiercely, his teeth were so enlarged. He was really afraid that this girl would bring some trouble to her. After all, the previous experience has proven that the creatures in the Greater Killer are particularly sensitive to sarcastic memes and will go wild if they don't move. Bo Yui's pendant was following the team at the end, holding the broken book in his hand, walking around, as if he didn't feel the tight atmosphere at all. He raised his head and looked at the top of the mountain, touched his chin and said, Sir Savior, don't be so tight. I heard from the villagers that although the top of the mountain of the bird is dangerous, it hides the ultimate treasure that can stop the end of the world. We will definitely win the whole thing this time. I have already thought of a wonderful plan to ensure that there is no mistake. Your plan? Will you throw a fake egg or burn the mountain? Lian sneered, and Wu Zhen didn't believe that this guy could have any good ideas. He snatched the head and decided to not have vision Boyu, and quickly formulated a final defense plan in his brain. The first step is to observe the terrain after reaching the top of the mountain to confirm the source of the threat. The second step is to let Boyu and Xinqi stay in a safe position and never let them come. the third step is to delay time first and find weaknesses, until the 100th step, to ensure that the safety of the officer retreated. However, the plan never changes. When the three of them finally climbed to the top of the mountain, the scene in front of them made Li Yan froze in an instant. There is a huge flat land at the top of the mountain. There is an old stone fortress in the center. A group of black fogs are spinning over the fortress. In the fog, you can see a pair of red eyes, emitting a suffocating urgency. There were countless chicken bones and eggshells scattered on the ground around them, and the air was filled with a strong fishy smell, which made people almost unable to breathe. What made the skin even more numb was that the crisis thunder finally collapsed at this moment. After the mechanical sound was repeated for a few times, it directly made a sharp sizzling sound, and then it calmed down. Li Yan's heart sank, and when he secretly slammed the key of the system, he lost the chain, but he didn't dare to be careless and quickly in a low voice, "You, hide behind, don't be disturbed. This place is absolutely not simple. Io, Li Yan, don't be nervous, you see this altar, maybe it's the hiding place of the treasure." Boya didn't listen to him at all, excitedly pointing at the altar, with light flashing in his eyes. "I guess, as long as we disperse that black fog, the treasure will be in our hands. Watch me, I have a prop, guaranteed to solve the problem." Saying that, he took out a worn-out bamboo tube from his bosom, not knowing where he picked it up from, and inside it was stuffed with a dark mass, looking like fireworks. "Prop? What kind of trick are you up to again?" Li Yan frowned, just about to stop him, but Boyo had already lit the bamboo tube, emitting a whoosh sound, a cloud of black smoke rushing straight towards the fog above the altar. Then, with a bang, the black smoke exploded in the fog, emitting a pungent odor, like releasing a giant fart. "Are you sick?" Li Yan was so angry he wanted to slap him, but before he could finish speaking, the black fog above the altar suddenly surged violently, followed by a thunderous roar that shook the entire mountaintop. The fog dispersed, and a huge magical beast slowly revealed its form. It had the feathers and head of a chicken, but its body was as massive as a giant dragon, with wings spanning over 10 meters wide, covered in scale-like eggshells, and with every step it took, the ground cracked open. Its pair of blood-red eyes stared fixedly at the three, emitting endless rage. "What the hell is this?" Li Yan's heart raced wildly. Although the radar was already broken, just from the magical beast's aura, he knew this guy was absolutely the strongest enemy they had ever encountered. Boyo and Xianyu were also stunned. The bamboo tube in Boyo's hand dropped with a pat on the ground, and he stammered, This should be the legendary ultimate magical beast Chicken Badian, right? I heard it's the source of the chicken world's apocalypse, because of a homophone misunderstanding that made it go berserk." "Homophone misunderstanding? What misunderstanding?" Li Yan gritted his teeth and asked, his gaze fixed dead on the magical beast, ready to act at any moment. Xianyu carefully edged over at this time, whispering, "I heard from the villagers that this magical beast was originally the guardian of Chicken Cry Mountain, but someone mocked its name, saying Chicken Badian sounds like Extreme Badian, and as a result, it felt insulted and went berserk ever since, vowing to destroy the entire continent." "What? Just because of this nonsense?" Li Yan twitched his mouth, finding this reason absurdly ridiculous, but he had no time to complain, because Chicken Badian had already let out a roar, flapping its huge wings and stirring up a gust of wind, directly forcing the three back several steps. "Dodge!" Li Yan roared loudly, quickly tackling Boyu and Xianyu, narrowly avoiding the magical beast's first charge. His mind raced. Although the radar was broken, his previous experience told him that facing an enemy of this level, charging head-on was absolutely not feasible. He must find the weak point before striking. He quickly formulated an ultimate plan. First step, distract the magical beast's attention and observe its attack patterns. Second step, have Boyu and Xianyu responsible for drawing fire, absolutely not letting them act recklessly. Third step, search for the magical beast's weak point and concentrate full force for a strike. All the way to the 100th step, confirm the magical beast is down and immediately retreat. "Close your mouth." Li Yan's heart tightened and wanted to stop it, but it was too late. When Chi Badian heard the word, it seemed to touch a certain nerve. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Xianli, and let out a deafening roar. Then he opened his mouth wide and a black flame rushed her away. "Hey, help!" Xinshu was so scared that she hurriedly hid, but her martial power was zero, and her pressure could not run fast, and the flames were about to burn her. He spoke hard and was cautious without being able to take care of himself. He suddenly burst out his full strength, and his body flashed in front of Xianli, crossed his hands and slapped the flames, and stopped the blow. Who, can you stop talking?" Lian gasped and glared at Xinchi. His clothes were burnt for a long time, and a burnt smell came out. "Yeah. I'm sorry, I just want to relieve the atmosphere." Xinchu shook her neck and muttered in a small voice, but there was still a smile in her eyes, as if she didn't realize that she almost killed her teammates. Li rolled his eyes without saying a word, but he didn't have time to teach her, because Chi Badian had already slammed her huge claws and brought a crazy look. He kept on his side and observed the magical movements carefully and tried to find the weaknesses. After several fights, he finally discovered that although the power of the Chi Badian was amazing, after each attack, a broken gap appeared in his abdomen, as if he was injured, and a faint light was emitted. Weakness. That's it. Lian's eyes lit up. He quickly adjusted the plan, and decided to concentrate on attacking the gap with all his might. However, the attack speed of the Jabation was too fast, and he could not find a chance to get close. At this moment, Boya shook out from the side again, holding a broken wooden stick with a bunch of chicken hair on it, like a homemade slut, shouting, "Hey, guy, look here. I have something delicious here, come and chase me." "Boke, are you here again?" Li was so angry that he wanted to kill someone, but he had to admit that Boya's move was really effective. Chicken Badian was attracted by the chicken hair and turned his head toward him, giving Lian a moment of space. He grabbed the opportunity, flashed his body and suddenly hit the demon's abdomen. His fists were full of strength and smashed the broken gap. Bang! There was a loud noise, and Lian's fist seemed to smash into a bunch of cotton, and then the entire mountain shook. The chicken Badian emitted a sound of silence, and the gap in his abdomen expanded instantly, emitting a dazzling light. Then its body began to shake violently, as if something had collapsed inside. "It's done!" Lian was delighted, but he didn't even have time to pay homage. Ru Badian suddenly let out an even more angry roar, and then a black air burst out all over his body, and the attack became even more crazy. Lian was hit by a claw and flew directly out, hitting the edge of the sacrificial sutra, feeling that his 5 internal organs were almost displaced. "Lian, be careful. Don't let this guy turn you over, haha." Xian Chu saw this and shouted anxiously, but the voice fell, and Chi Baishan's eyes locked on her again, as if they were particularly sensitive to the word chicken, and another group of flames came from her mouth. Another saying that? Lian almost vomited blood, but seeing Xian Qing was about to suffer again, he forced himself to get up, rushed to her again, and took the blow. The flames made his skin hurt, but he gritted his teeth and held back. There was only one thought in his brain: I must solve this guy, otherwise they would not be able to escape. Boya was not at this time, and when Lu Lian was suppressed, he suddenly moved, lifted a piece of chicken bone from the ground, threw it at Chi Badian, and shouted, "Hey, big guy, come and chase me. Don't bully my boss all the time." This throw really worked. Chi Badian was attracted by the bone, turned around and threw it at him, giving Lian a little breathing time. "Boyu, your pitfall has been scattered." Lian gasped and quickly got up, his eyes tightly locking the gap in the magic beast's abdomen. He knew that although that hit was rekindled the other side, it was not fatal. He had to go with all his might to solve this battle in a complete way. "Hey, you guys, continue to attract its attention, don't stop." Lian roared, then took a deep breath, and his body burst out to the extreme, and his body rushed towards the chicken Badian like an arrow. Although Boyo and Shinshio were not vague, they were not vague at this time. Boyo continued to throw all kinds of messy things, Shinshio shouted all kinds of unadjusted words, and forced the demon's attention for a moment. That's this moment. Lian seized the opportunity, jumped to the bottom of Chi Baishan's abdomen, lifted his fists high, gathered all his strength, and smashed it hard at the broken gap. Down. Room. A huge sound of shocking the earth. Leanne's fist seemed to smash into a huge vortex. The gap in the abdomen burst out instantly, emitting a dazzling light. Then its body shook violently, and a sound of silence was released, and it finally fell to the ground, lifting up a dusty earth. It's done. Li Yanyan sat on the ground, covered in dust, his clothes were torn like beggars, and his breath was trembling with a silk shaking. He looked down and saw that the chicken Badian had been silent for a long time. His body began to turn into black air and dissipate. The black fog on the fort also dissipated, revealing a stone tablet with a glimmer of light, with several lines of words engraved on it. The end of the chicken world has been lifted, the dangerous land has regained peace, and the name of the Savior will be passed on forever. The trough, it's finally done. Lian Long sighed and felt as if the whole person was exhausted. But he felt a sense of satisfaction that he could not say. Although he was cheated all the way, he at least saved his teammates and solved the biggest crisis. Lian, it's awesome. This punch is simply a chicken that shakes the world. Bo Yu crawled over from the side, giving a thumbs up with his face and admiringly. Although his body was covered in dust, he smiled as if nothing had happened. Yes, right, Lian, you are so powerful that Chi Badian must call you the Chicken Emperor, haha. Xian Qing also came over, covering her mouth and laughing, as if she had completely forgotten that she almost killed her teammates. Li glared at them without saying a word, believing in this pitfall. He stood up, walked to the stone tablet, confirming that the end of the chicken world had been lifted, and the stone in his heart finally landed on the ground. However, when he turned around, he saw that Bo Yu and Xinqi were studying the stone tablet, as if he was holding back some bad ideas. Hey, Lian, look at this stone tablet, maybe there is any other treasure rope. Let's look for it again and say it may be able to make money. Bo Yu said excitedly, his eyes flashing. Yes, right, Lian, we've been chicken all the way, so we have to take some good things, haha. Xian Qi also said with a helping voice, smiling so hard that his eyes were slim. Lian rubbed his son's vagina and sighed helplessly, okay, if you lose your nerve, don't make trouble. Although he said this, he had already made up his mind that no matter what trouble this person would do, he would keep an eye on it and would never let them come. The wind on the top of the mountain continued to cry, and Lian looked at the clouds far away, and his heart was much calmer than before. Perhaps, although this journey was ridiculous, it also made him understand that some things are not enough to be cautious, but they still have to be a little bit of urgency and trust, even if it is trust in this pitfall. The cold wind at the top of the chicken mountain passed by, dissipating with a smelly smell. Lian leaned against the stone tablet beside the fortress, covered in dust, and there were a few chicken hairs on his broken clothes. Although his face was tired, there was a bright spot in his eyes. He looked down at the words engraved on the stone tablet. The end of the chicken world has been lifted, the danger has regained peace, and the name of the Savior has been passed on forever. The stone in his heart finally landed on the ground. Although he was cheated all the way, although he only wanted to be low-key from the beginning to the end, at least the biggest crisis was solved, and his teammates stood by all sides. Hey, Lian, look at this stone tablet, how do you write? The name of the Savior will be eternal, isn't this talking about you? From now on, you will be the hero of the top of the dangerous land. Bo Yu came over, holding the broken book in his hand, patting Lian's shoulder with a smile, as if he had completely forgotten the kind of wisdom plan that he almost killed his teammates. Yes, your battle is simply a chicken that shakes the world. I guess the whole world of chickens in the world must call you the Chicken Emperor, haha. Xian Qing stood aside, covering her mouth and laughing. Although her body was covered in dust, her eyes were filled with a bright light, and it seemed that she had not passed the battle just now. Li rolled his eyes without saying a word and thought it would be a pitfall. He rubbed his sore shoulders and muttered in a low voice, "Hero is a fart, I just want to go down the mountain tightly, find a place to hide, and pass some peace of mind." After speaking, he stood up and prepared to take the two people away from this broken place. However, without 2 steps, a noisy sound suddenly came from below the top of the mountain, like the noise of the crowd, and you could still hear the shouts of the Savior's age. "What's the situation?" Leanne's eyebrows stood and walked to the top of the mountain and looked down. He saw a large group of people gathered under the foot of the mountain, including several hundred villagers. One with broken farm tools and 5 colored flags, was rushing his hands towards the top of the mountain. There were also several familiar faces in the crowd, the old white beard they met when they set out and the children in the village. "Savior! The Savior is coming down. The chicken Badian was defeated, and the mainland is saved," a villager shouted at the top of his voice, full of excitement. "Yes, right, the silence on the top of the mountain just made the chickens in our village fly into the sky. The Savior is mighty." Another villager agreed, holding a fat chicken in his hand, as if he was specially brought to express his gratitude. Lian heard these words and his face turned dark in an instant. He wanted to be low-key, but the static movement of this battle was too great. I guess he knew the entire danger. He gritted his teeth and glared at Boyu and Shinshu, and shouted in a low voice, "It's all your fault. If you weren't for coming, could I be exposed like this?" "Hey, Lian, don't be angry." Boyu smiled and didn't think he was wrong. "Look, although it was exposed, everyone regards you as a hero. How great is it? Besides, Shinshu and I have not helped us all along the way, right? Help? Help me." Lian hummed without any worries, but his heart was no longer so angry. Although they were so fooled, they didn't really let him go at the critical moment, and even used their unreliable methods to attract firepower, giving him the opportunity to counterattack. Thinking of this, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he didn't continue to suck it. Shinshu saw that he didn't say anything. Lima came over and blinked, saying, "Lian, don't worry. Look, everyone is here to welcome you, go down and accept your hearing. Maybe there is something better, such as chicken eggs, chicken meat, etc. We can't lose our good fortune by chicken, haha. Also say chicken?" Lian's eyes twitched, almost unable to hold back his movements, but looking at Xian Qing's innocent and smiling expression, he finally sighed and pointed helplessly, "Okay, go down and take a look, but I'm right, don't come back." The three of them walked down the mountain road. As soon as they reached the foot of the mountain, the villagers rushed up, feeling as if they had seen a long-lost family. The white beard walked over with a stubborn head, and his face grabbed Lian's hand with excitement, and his voice was filled with crying, "Savior, you are really the savior of our dangerous land. The chicken Badian was defeated, so we don't have to worry about the end of the world anymore. From now on, you will be the hero in our minds." That's it. The Savior's punch made the mountain collapse, and it was simply a chicken domineering enemy. A child shouted, holding a chicken hairpin in his hand, looking at Lian with admiration. Lian was embarrassed by this passion, and hurriedly said, Don't call me hero. I'm the one who has been by the way. I helped me with it, really." However, no one heard his explanation. The villagers came up in a lingering manner and gave all kinds of thank you. Some were holding a chicken egg, some were holding a big cock, and some even gave a bunch of chicken-made hats, and they insisted on wearing it for Lian, saying that they were heroes. "What's this hat?" Lian looked at the top chicken wool hat, his face as dark as a bottom, but he couldn't resist the enthusiasm of the villagers, so he could only wear it with his head, which led to a bigger laugh and audible sound. Boyu and Shinshu next to him laughed so hard that they couldn't stand up. Boyu patted his thighs and said, "Ha, Lian, your look is so simple that it is the best in the world. Yes, right, if you wear this hat, you are the true king of the chicken, ha." Shinshu covered her mouth and laughed secretly, and did not forget to fill the knife. Lian gritted his teeth and glared at them, wishing he could hit the hat directly on the person's face, but he finally held it back. After all, the villager's enthusiasm was sincere and he was not easy to get angry, so he could only accept it with his head. At this moment, the white beard suddenly cleared his throat and announced with a loud voice, "Of course, the Savior saved our mainland. We have to give him a formal name. In my opinion, what about the most cautious laughing-stock hero?" Not only did the Savior's cautious style, but he also remembered all kinds of jokes along the way, haha. Hearing stock? Lian almost burst out when he heard this name. He obviously wanted to be downplayed, but why was he named such a famous person? However, the villagers tried their best to find that this number was more appropriate. Lima shouted, "The most cautious laughing-stock hero. The most cautious laughing-stock hero." Leanne's face was as red as a tomato, and he wanted to find a place to diamond it, but he looked at the villagers' smiles, and Bo Yu and Xian Li were still happy and rejoicing next to him. Maybe, although this destruction number is unsuccessful, at least, everyone is really grateful to him. He rubbed his son's vagina and muttered in a low voice, "Okay, the laughing stock is the laughing stock, which is stronger than the Doomsday of the chicken world." "Ha, Lian, you are really worthy of being a laughing hero." Bo Yu smiled and patted his shoulder, then turned around and shouted to the villagers, "1. The savior has accepted the name, we have to give it a good greeting, right? I have a wonderful idea to hold a chicken must not be lost celebration, how about it? Let's catch more chickens together." "Yes, right, the Qingshu conference is very chicken and exciting, haha." Xian Lima followed the helping voice, and his eyes lit up. Lian heard this and his skin was almost blown up. He hurriedly said, "Don't come. I won't participate in the chicken catching conference." However, the villagers had already been hot and shouted, "Good idea." Some even started to build a platform on the scene and prepared chicken crocs, and the scene was as hot as a festival. "Savior, come here, let's have a head, let's have fun together." A villager smiled and pulled Lian, and forced him to the direction of the platform. He was helpless when he spoke, but looking at everyone's cheerful look, a string in his heart seemed to be touched. Perhaps, although this journey was ridiculous, he had learned something from the middle school of carefulness. Some things are not bad just by planning in defense. It is not bad to relax and accept the enthusiasm of the people around him. "Okay, this time." Lian gritted his teeth and clenched the spot, and was then held up by the villagers and walked towards the platform. Bo Yu and Qingshu were even more excited. Bo Yu announced on the spot that he was a chicken think tank and began to give everyone various ridiculous ideas, such as confusing opponents with chicken. Qingshu was responsible for oiling the fire on the side, and kept shouting chicken must not be lost at times, which made the scene even more unreasonable. After the competition started, Lian originally wanted to try his best and grabbed a few chickens to cross the game, but the villagers insisted that he show his heroic power and forced him to enter the chicken group. As a result, he accidentally exerted force and punched the chicken group and flew away directly, and the sky was filled with chicken hair, making the scene so funny that it made people laugh and cry. The villagers were stunned at first, and then burst into a shocking laughter, shouting the hero who laughed in the stock market is mighty. "Ha, Lian, your move is simply a chicken flying dog." Bo Yu couldn't straighten his waist, and he was holding a chicken in his hand, like a trophy he was caught. "Yes, right, you can catch the chickens with such strength and even capture the chicken realm record, ha." Xian Qing also put on the side, smiling so hard that his eyes were almost out. He spoke hard and his face was black, but looking at the smiling faces of the people around him, he was no longer so resistant. Perhaps, although this laughing hero was unsuccessful, it was quite consistent with his experience. He was cautious all the way, but he still made countless jokes. He slammed his head, and finally smiled at the corner of his mouth. He grabbed a chicken with his hand and lifted it up high, causing a bigger cry. The celebration continued until evening. The villagers set up a bonfire and sang and danced around the fire. The scene was as hot as a grand festival. Lian sat next to the fire, holding a skewer of roasted chicken wings in his hand. Although he was still helpless, his eyes were filled with warmth. Boyu and Xinqing sat next to him. Boyu was talking excitedly about his new intelligence and said that he wanted to use chicken hair to make a body clothes. Xinqing kept playing with sarcastic melody, and sometimes laughed at the chicken-related jokes, and rolled her eyes directly. "Hey, can you calm down?" Lian finally couldn't help it, and took a bite of the chicken wings and said unhappily, "The end of the chicken world has been resolved. Let's be at ease next, can we do it?" "Anshu? That's so meaningless." Bo Yulima retorted and said with a smile, "Lian, you are a laughing hero now. People in the whole world are waiting to hear your new jokes. Besides, Dangerous land is so big, maybe there is still something new to us waiting for us to solve. I have already thought of the next plan. Let's go to the Chicken Sea to explore the treasure, how about it? Yes, right, Chicken Tai Hai, it sounds very chicken and maybe you can find something chicken shizinbeo, ha. Xian Qing also followed the scene and blinked her eyes and looked forward to it. Li Yan heard this man's words and almost threw the chicken wings out, but he looked at their unkind smiles and his heart was no longer so resistant. Although he was cheated, he had learned a lot from this pitfall. For example, occasionally relaxing and accepting the ridicule of the people around him is also a kind of growth. Thinking of this, he sighed and said helplessly, "Okay, if you lose your worries, but after that, there will be troubles in the future. You are responsible for the solution. I am not a cannon fodder." "No problem. With me here, I'll be sure to make no mistakes." Boyo patted his chest and looked confident, as if he had completely forgotten how unreliable his previous intelligence was. Yes, we are united in our hearts and can get through any trouble, haha. Shinshu also spoke in a helping voice, smiling so hard that his eyes turned into crescent moons. Li slammed his head without saying a word, but the corner of his mouth began to slam. He looked at the smiles of the villagers under the bonfire, and then looked at the unreliable teammates around him. He suddenly felt that maybe such days were not worth it. Although he still wants to be humble, since he has become the most cautious laughing-stock hero, then accept it, at least, with this pitfall, the next road will never be boring. The night was deeper, and the bonfire lights reflected the village under the foot of the Chicken Mountain, and laughter and singing were flying in the wind. Li Yan leaned against a stone head, holding a chicken wing in his hand. He was occasionally rolled his eyes by Boyu and Shinchi's new plan, but there was a smile in his eyes. Although the crisis in the Great Dangerous Land has been resolved, the legendary story of the laughing hero and his cheating teammates is obviously not far from over.